My tropical and exotic plants are now snug as a bug in a rug inside the greenhouse, nicely protected for the winter time. And I've spent a lot of money on these beautiful plants over the years, so I want to make sure I can get them to get through winter time and enjoy them year after year after year. So, lots of things you can do to protect your plants through winter time. This is a ginger or hedychium that's going to flourish next year, protected from the frost. As you can see, it's all lovely and snuggly and comfortable for the winter. But I've got other plants in the greenhouse as well. I've got a fantastic strelitzia or bird of paradise. I've got a lemon tree here, which is looking a little bit sad at the moment, but next spring when the weather warms up, that's going to look absolutely amazing. I've got some cannas. In fact, they're even flowering a little bit as well, which is a bit crazy, but they're nicely protected for the winter time. And even some pelargonium cuttings I took as well of a lovely sort of lemon scented pelargonium that look fantastic in the garden during the summer. So all these plants are nicely snuggled up in the greenhouse, ready for winter. Want to know how to keep your precious tropical plants safe through the winter in your greenhouse? Well, here's my guide to how to do it. It's got to that time of year where it's just too cold to keep your tender, precious plants outside, your tropical plants, your exotic plants, and you need to bring them into the greenhouse to keep them warm and snug and protected from the elements through the winter. But one really important thing to do is to make sure the greenhouse is really sterile and clean before you bring those plants in. That way you're going to avoid pests and diseases affecting the plants during the winter time and being damaged and looking very sad when they come out in the spring. And there's just some basic things you need to do. Firstly, go round and sweep all the floors, getting right into the corners, making sure there's no slugs or snails lurking or any insect eggs or cocoons or anything like that. Brush down all the shelves, for example. And if you've got pots and trays and saucers in the greenhouse, give those a good clean. Make sure nothing's lurking inside those that could kind of breed and spread disease and insects and stuff through the greenhouse during the winter time. And also all the glasswork. Use a pressure washer to blast down all the glasswork. Get that really, really super clean. Make sure there's no bits of moss and algae and stuff building up on the glass. And also, if you get the glass really, really clean, you're going to get that maximum light come through during the winter time as well, which is going to be really, really important for those plants that are resting in that lovely snug environment in the greenhouse through the winter. So get all those things done. Get the greenhouse really sterile, really clean, really hygienic. And that way you're going to give all those plants the best chance possible to get through winter disease-free and pest-free. You might just want to use your greenhouse to keep plants out the wind and keep them dry in the winter time so they don't rot off. But some plants, especially your tropical exotic plants, will need a little bit of heat to keep them frost free during the winter time. They don't need to be super warm. They just need to be kept at 2 or 3 degrees above freezing so they don't freeze and actually perish in your greenhouse during the winter time. And there's various options and ways of doing that. I've got my old faithful fan heater here, which I really, really love. I can set that on a really, really low setting, and I find this just keeps the greenhouse temperature a degree or two above freezing and just stops that damaging frost getting to the plants and destroying them during the winter time. You can use paraffin heaters. You can use oil-filled rad type of greenhouse heaters as well. There's a whole range of different greenhouse heaters you can use. Some have got timers, some have got thermostats. So, the options are out there for whatever suits you. But critically, if you have got plants like Bougainvilleas, for example, or sort of those tropical kind of plants, they will need just that little bit of protection on those really cold nights just to keep them frost-free. Now you've got the greenhouse nice and sterile and clean, hygienic. One of the most important things to do is make sure your plants are the same, because you don't want to put plants that are damaged, that have got disease, that have got pests, that have got dead material into that nice clean greenhouse and spoil that nice hygienic space. So first thing to do, just check over your plant for dead leaves or dead flowers. This Bougainvillea, for example, has got some bracts that have gone over. So I'm going to pick those off because they're dying now. And if I put those in the greenhouse, they'll go moldy, they'll decay, and again they can cause problems with disease, pests, all that kind of thing. So check the plant itself, look through the plant, make sure there's no pests or diseases on the plant, make sure there's no green fly, no black fly, no caterpillars, and check at the base of the plant. Look around the base, check for slugs and snails, and even the pot itself. Check at the base of the pot, make sure there's no slugs or snails or insect eggs lurking at the bottom there. And this pot's all covered in moss and algae as well, so I'd be really, really tempted to kind of brush that off, take that away from the pot as well, because again, things like that can always store insect eggs, pests, diseases. So a nice clean hygienic pot free of moss and algae and all those bits and pieces will also help to prevent any pest diseases and things developing in the greenhouse. And then once that plant has been picked over, once you've inspected it, once you've got the pot nice and clean, once you've cleaned the surface of the soil and got rid of all that leaf debris, you know that plant is nice and hygienic and safe to put in the greenhouse with all your other plants, and it's just going to give them that maximum chance to get through the winter time without succumbing to diseases and infections, all those kind of pests and nasty things that can affect your plants when they're inside a greenhouse. Some of your plants might have got quite big during the summertime, so one final thing you can do once you've picked them all over and got them really hygienic is give them a little bit of a trim just before you put them back into the greenhouse for the winter. This is my Bougainvillea, and every year I give it a good prune anyway, in the spring normally, but no problem at all. Just giving it a little trim round just before you put it in the greenhouse for the winter. That way you're going to save space inside the greenhouse, and it's not going to be such a struggle to store it through the winter time. You don't have to go too mad. Just take off some of the longish stems, trim it round a little bit like that. There's a little bit there, a little bit there, and you can see literally all I've done, I haven't taken a huge amount off, but I've just made it that little bit more compact and that little bit more easy to store in the greenhouse during the winter. And then in springtime, when it starts to reshoot, I can trim it back properly to lots of lively shoots. And that way next year I'm going to get these fantastic bracts all over again. So now this bougainvillea is all nicely trimmed. It's easy now to take that into the greenhouse, and then we can space it out with the rest of the plant. So off it goes into the greenhouse to be kept frost free until next spring. So now I've started bringing my plants into the greenhouse, and it's important to get the spacings right. If you can, space the plants out so there's a nice amount of air between each of the plants as well. Again, that prevents mildew and molds and all that kind of thing building up, because you get that nice airflow and you don't get all that really high humidity. That's important. And also it means you can get between the plants during the winter time and pick over any leaves or anything that's gone a little bit sort of off color or not looking as healthy as it should be. And also arrange them facing the sun. But if you can do that, have the tallest plants at the back and the shortest ones at the front. That way the ones at the front aren't shadowed by the taller ones, and everything gets as much winter sunlight as possible. That's really really important, because the light levels are really low this time of year. So the more sunlight each plant can get, the better it's going to be for getting it through the winter time. I've taken away my saucers. I've put all my saucers down underneath the decking at the moment, so I don't really need those under the plants in the winter time, because I want them to remain really well drained. I don't want really wet, boggy soil, because again, that could cause the plants to rot off or die during winter. But then come the spring, perhaps March, mid-March time, once the temperatures warm up a little bit, I can put those saucers back underneath the plants and start watering them again before I finally bring them out after all the risk of frost has gone by. So be careful about the spacings, space them out as much as you can, get as much air around them, as much light to them as possible, keep them on the dryish side during the winter time, and that way you're going to maximize the chances of your precious plants getting all the way through the winter. So once you've finally got all your plants in place, they're nicely spaced out, they're all nice and snuggly and kind of safe for the winter time, just important to check them at least once a week or every 10 days through the winter time. Make sure there's no pests or diseases, make sure nothing's dried out, make sure there's no problems with any of the plants, make sure no slugs or snails or anything has got in. And also check the heater, make sure the heater's working properly, because obviously that's really, really critical. Because if that fails and you get a really, really cold night, you could lose lots of your plants. So just do those little things, just keep a check, keep an eye out. Think of them as your kind of little babies that you're keeping safe through the winter time in your greenhouse, and you just need to keep a good eye on them. I've still got a little bit to do in mine. I've still got a little bit more cleaning up to do and a few more other bits and pieces to do. But hopefully I've given you some ideas. I've given you some inspiration of how to prepare your greenhouse for winter, how to prepare your plants for winter, how to keep them safe through the winter, and obviously get those beautiful precious plants back out next spring and summer for another fantastic year of display. So if you want to subscribe to my YouTube channel for many more tips and ideas about how to look after your garden and many other aspects of gardening, please do.